Today's episode is sponsored by Raul Rodriguez Law.
When you're in an auto accident, you shouldn't be concerned with legal runarounds, just real advice. You deserve an attorney ready to work for you, an attorney that won't back down.
I've lost loved ones due to the negligence of others. If you or a loved one has been injured in an auto accident, I want to be there for you.
Raul B. Rodriguez and his team care about ensuring you and your family are represented, whether on the road or in the workplace. Raul is real, and Raul won't back down. Call 210-899-0300 to schedule a free consultation.
You shoot that.
And then you shoot it that night and then you wake up sick.
For those of us who haven't experienced heroin, what's it like? Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
You absolutely never want to feel this, I promise you. But if you were to feel it, the only way I can describe it is like the most warm, comfortable blanket just being wrapped around you.
So that's how it hooks people.
Total body euphoria.
Wow.
It is it was the greatest, better than sex, better than anything. You feel that and you're like, oh, I've been going my whole life without this.
Yeah.
But you don't feel as if it's just going to grab a hold of you like that.
It controls you at that point.
And then once there's levels, and so once you put drugs into a needle and you feel the way that feels, you're like, oh, I'm never putting nothing up my nose again. Everything's going in this.
Wow.
To sit here to be almost 8 years sober now and to say those things, it sounds ridiculous.
Like it's never happened to you. Like
it seems like a completely different person. The train of thought, the things I did, all that stuff, it doesn't even seem. I know I did it. But it doesn't seem real because it's like I could never, you know what I mean?
That's what he says about fighting all the time, all those years and all those fights and all that, carnage and all that training and all that. It's like he almost doesn't identify as that person.
Yeah, it's not me. The person I am today is not that person anymore. Right. It's like there's no way I went through that. There's no way I did all that or fought that way or got cut like that and kept. It's just a different person.
Right. Yeah. But I tell people all the time, like I see now in my life, like. If you would have told me, like, I would be proud to have ever gone through those things, I would have told someone they were crazy. But it's so odd now that the things I was most ashamed of in my life are now the things I'm most proud of to stand in front of hundreds of people and talk about, just for the single fact that I've been able to understand that I could use this experience to help other people.
Yeah.
And then you start getting messages online or people coming up to you with tears in their eyes and talking about how just my willingness to open up and talk about my stuff has helped them open up and talk about theirs.
So here's a question. When someone says, what you said, I can help other people, okay? And I know that most of the time you got to help themselves, right?
Yeah.
How do you help them?
So it depends. Obviously, my message isn't going to hit. It's not going to hit everybody. But there's some people, people ask me all the time, like if I have a loved one and they're messed up right now, what do I do? And it's a very difficult question because we're playing with somebody's life, right? Yeah. Now, I'm always going to reach out and try to help that person. But if they're not ready, they're not ready. Now, hopefully they hear me speak at some point and I say something that just hits them the right way because that's what happens oftentimes. And now, if I walk into a room of 100 people and I speak and one person comes up to me at the end and they're like, man, I'm going to start running tomorrow because this literally just happened. I did my very first, you know what an intervention is? So I did an intervention. It was my first intervention I'd ever done. It was about 1.5 years ago. Went in, did an intervention on this guy, got him out, got him to treatment. We had one conversation on the way to treatment. It was about an hour-long conversation. I called back out there weeks later to check in on him, and come to find out he had started running while he was in treatment. By the time he had checked out at 90 days of treatment, he had ran 250 miles, cumulative. And then this just past weekend, he went and ran the Austin Marathon with me.
Wow.
And so to see that, and all that was one conversation, but to watch this dude get his family back, he's back with his wife, his kids are back into his life. His mother just passed away, and she was the one who had me do the intervention on him. And he and I sat there and talked before the race, and I was like, dude, like, just so you know, your mother is looking down on you, and she could not be more proud. Yes, she's gone, but at least she got to see you back with your family. She got to see you whole again.
She was happy that where he was at. Yeah.
And so I don't think I'm going to be able to change everybody, but, you know.
We say the same thing about mental health. Just someone listening.
That's it.
And say, man, I got to, whatever, you know. Yeah.
And oftentimes you'll think you'll say something super profound, and that's not even what hits them. It was the little throwaway comment that you don't even think about, that they come and they're like, that's what got me right there. And so now they're listening. And I just had never had that in life. I did not know a world existed where I could take all this pain and be able to give it some purpose, to make my family help my family understand we didn't go through this for nothing.
That's where you and I relate a lot in just the, where do I go with this? Who's talking about mental health 10 years ago? I'm just one of those guys, like, I guess I'm lost, or I guess I'm just like not meant for this world or whatever. Right. Suicide comes in my brain and I'm like, this is the way out, right? Like, this is the only way I know to stop all of this. So now a lot of times when I get messages all the time, and just because we're open about what we've been through, right? And I always say, do you want to not be here, or do you just want to not feel what you're feeling? Right. Because those are two totally extreme outcomes. Yes. You know what I mean? And at that time, because I've been there, right, where I'm like, okay, well, I just want to end this. This is the only thing I know. This is the only way I know how to stop this. No one here knows what I'm going through, but I knew to end this. You know what I mean? And it's always that thought of, man, it's not that you want to just finish all of this. You just don't want to feel that. There's a way to not feel that, you know. And it's even something that small, like, it just popped in my brain, like, I don't want to die. I just don't want to feel this. Right. You know, and that alone just totally flipped how I saw things, and how people that reach out to me sometimes, how you're right, I can't fix everybody, but that one person, even this podcast, just that one person listening, just hearing it, that one parent or that one kid who can relate now, is just like, wow, like, when you see that big change, it's so gratifying. Right. You know what I mean? And dude,
and another thing, I mean, bro, you're a big dude. I mean, you fought, right? Big dude, fought. You got a tattoo on the side of your head. That's not the average type dude that's opening up and talking about mental health or struggling or talking about suicide. Like, we're the people they need to hear this from. You know what I mean? You're not some little skinny dude with a tie on sitting there like with your doctorate degree. No, I've lived this. Yeah. About 6 months ago, dude, I was going through a super tough time, and there was nothing that I could point to. I have so many blessings in my life. I have a beautiful wife that loves me to the sun and back. We have a home. We have 2 dogs. We just got another puppy. My podcast is doing good. So many things. But I'm driving down the road, and I am miserable for no reason, just miserable. And I remember having the conscious thought, it was like, man, I could get high right now over this. And then in the same fluid thought, I was like, I'd rather kill myself than ever get high. And then as soon as I said that in my head, it was like the most calming feeling ever came over me. And I was like, and it's like, I caught myself, because that's, you know, suicide is not something normally that has ever really come up for me like that. But all of a sudden now it is, and I'm 7 years sober, like, what's happening? But it was kind of a blessing, because it happened, but I identified it really quick. And it was like, all right, I've been here before. What do I need to do? I need to get around good people. I need to get back to my community. I need to get back to running. And so immediately I was at a run group every day that week, signed up for a race, went and ran a Spartan race that weekend. And before I knew it, I was back out of it. But it's like, if I hadn't been here before and realized that I have these tools now to understand of how do I not feel this, and understand it's like, I'm not going to give a permanent solution to this temporary problem.
Yeah, that's what I use that too when I help people, is always like, they're always scared of going back to the bottom. And I'm always like, how could you, if you have a radar for it? Like, how could you hit that bottom floor if you have these tools now that you need? Like, you're already talking to your husband, you're already talking to your best friend, you're talking to somebody, and they're aware of it too. So, but the first time you hit it when you're by yourself, how could you hit that again? You're not by yourself anymore. You have a community, you have people looking out for you, you have tools, right? It's almost on you if you get there again, because you have these tools to help you out. Like, I always say, I've never felt that again. I've never gone that low again. No. You know what I mean? Because you use the tools around you. I was open. I was speaking to my parents and my brother and all that. So they're going to know if I'm going there. They're not going to let me get that far. You know, so I always think it's always that fear of, I'm going to hit the floor again. And often, like, with mental health anyway, addiction can be different. But with mental health, I always see, like, you never hit that floor. You're always scared of it. But the fact that you're scared of it is the reason why you won't hit it. You know what I'm saying?
I see a relation about how it's always, whatever you feel, you need someone there with you. Yeah. Right? Yes. On both sides. I need support. It's a support group, right? Or a friend or a family that's going to be the same. I got you. Yeah. Well, I'm here with you. Yeah. And no one knows how important that is. We always say, I can't help them, like, fix them or whatever, fix it or whatever, but I can be there for it.
Right.
With it.
Yeah. And, you know, I think, how old are you?
I'm 33.
All right. So you're a little younger than me, but I mean, you grow up, you have a fighter as a father, so I would imagine like we got to be tough and all that. And like I realized I was doing that and just burying this stuff down and trying to do everything on my own, and my life was shit. And as soon as I put that pride down and started asking for help and being willing to reach out and talk with people, that's when things changed.
For sure. You're changing your road.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, this is totally here. I didn't know that I could be this person. I know I could be this influential. I know I can be this, motivating or whatever.
Right.
Like, I couldn't even motivate myself, but yet I'm motivating all these people. How insane is that, right? Like, it's almost an out-of-body experience. You don't even know who this person is, right? Like, you didn't even know who that person was.
Right.
How many times did you fall? Like, you thought, I'm getting some help, whether it's rehab, talking to a doc, whatever. And you kind of you go back, right? You fall. How many times did you fall before, and what was it that finally triggered it for you where
That's a really good question.
things fell into place?
So I'll tell you, I went to treatment 12 times.
Okay.
That can give you a scope on how many times, but I couldn't even count how many times I relapsed. What I do know is anytime I tried to get sober, it was never for the right reasons. Usually it was try to get out of trouble. But like I believed it, you know what I mean? Like I believe, all right, I'm going to treatment, I'm really going to get sober. But then I needed to check what my motives were. And so I countless times I go to treatment. The last time I went to treatment, so I caught 2 felonies in the state of Texas for heroin possession, went away, did 2 years. Didn't learn my lesson, got back out, started hanging around the same people, and picked up 2 more felonies, all in Waco.
Wow.
All 4 felonies in Waco, which is oddly enough, it's a lot like Youngstown.
Right.
So I caught the 4th one, and they're going to charge me as habitual criminal. And so I remember going and standing in front of a judge, and I'll say up to that point in my life, I thought I was a tough guy. Run the streets, could be in any bad neighborhood, was always good, lived all over the country, 10 years military service. That judge looked me in the face and said he didn't see any reason to sentence me to under 20 years. So whatever he was going to sentence me was 20 or over. Wow. And all the tough guy shit went out the window immediately. I remember talking to my lawyer after that, and I was like, look, it was already a foregone conclusion. I'm going away for 20 years. And so I was like, do you think you could at least give me enough time where I can try to get into treatment and get sober? So at least when I go, I'm not withdrawing in jail, and hopefully I can get back on speaking terms with my family. And so he said yes, and I checked into treatment. And as long as I stayed in treatment, they would continue to allow me to do it. And so I ended up doing 8 months of treatment. And then the major turning point, which it's in the film, is I'm not a tremendously organized person, but for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, had to have been God, but something made me keep this folder. And every sheet I wrote on, every note I took, every test I took, worksheet, meeting I went to, I would put everything in this folder. And then it was time at the end of the 8 months to go to my sentencing hearing, to meet the lawyer for the sentencing hearing. Went to there, presented him the folder. I had no motive I was going away for 20 years, but I just wanted to show him he didn't get me all this time in vain. And so I handed him the folder. He opens it up, his jaw drops, and he's just like, I never expected this out of you. You've given me something really to work with here. Whatever you're doing, I need you to keep doing it. And let me go talk to the judge. And so as soon as he said that, I was on fire. It was the first moment, and as long as I can remember, there was actually some hope in my life. And so I was willing to do whatever. And so I went back to Austin, checked into a 6-month inpatient facility, and then when it was all said and done, they ended up having my sentencing hearing. They gave me 10 years probation, and I discharged it in 5.
Wow.
Here we are.
Man.
But that was the moment where it was like I had this little glimmer of hope, and I was like, I'm not letting go of that for anything.
Yeah.
And that hope almost came out of everyone taking away that control, right? Like that judge he had his hand on the wheel of your life. And that was like, oh, okay, I'm not in control. I'm not tough anymore.
That was the hand of God right there, buddy.
I mean, you're giving me goosebumps, but there's so many stories. If we got time, I want to tell you a quick story.
We got all
for
it.
it.
All
so
the world.
I'll tell you one of my big problems in life, I would say, was at the time I wasn't a big God guy. It's not that I didn't believe in God, I just didn't know what quite to believe in. And so I always make the joke, I don't know if I listened to too much Joe Rogan or what, but I started questioning everything. And then so I start saying, man wrote the Bible, can I really trust this or whatever? So I just couldn't put God in a box. Now looking back, the one thing I think I was neglecting was the word faith. I just didn't have any faith. And so this story that I'm going to tell you, it let me know without a shadow of a doubt that God is very real in my life. And so as I'm getting out of the military, I'm being kicked out of the military. They're going to send me to my first treatment center.
Stop.
Go ahead.
You getting kicked out of the military?
Yeah. Failed 2-year analysis right at the end of my enlistment.
So you're using?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
All the time.
Are there a bunch of guys in the military using?
There was a handful. As a whole, yeah, but like there was a handful of us that were doing it together in the company.
It's a big deal getting kicked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything happened how it should have, though. But so I'm in the process of getting kicked out, and they're going to send me to treatment. And so my goal was to just try to get out of trouble, try to salvage my military career. And so they sent me there. It was a 30-day inpatient facility, and I'll tell you my MO up my whole life was that I want to hang around the funny guys. We're going to hang around the funny guys. We're going to talk shit. That's how we're going to pass time. So it didn't matter, military, sports, work, school, I hang around the funny guys. And so I go in there, and immediately I meet a guy who's 6-7 years younger than me, funny as hell, and I'm like, cool, that's my rehab homie right there. We're going to ride this out together. So we're in there talking shit, we're talking to girls, we're doing everything you shouldn't do in treatment. Then I end up breaking one of the cardinal rules that you don't ever do in treatment, and that's dating while you're in treatment. I meet a girl in there. She's going to be my everything. Now you have to ask yourself, why would you ever want to choose somebody of the same mental health or thing as you? But that's what I did. So I get out. I end up in the most toxic 2-year relationship known to mankind, both of our faults. And she had borderline personality disorder. I don't know if you've ever dealt with anybody with that, but it was always interesting. And so I immediately start getting in trouble with the law. I catch 2 felonies, but now I got to go away to TDC. But I got all my boys out on the streets. They're going to hold me down. They're going to put money on my books. My girl's going to hold me down. She's going to write me letters. How many letters do you think I got from my girl while I was gone?
One at least?
None.
Really?
Nothing. How much money do you think my boys put on my books? Not a dime. Nothing. So completely alone, do my 2 years. I get out and I make the logical drug addict decision that I got to look up the girl now because I'm lonely, see what she's up to. And so come to find out, she's with my young buddy from the treatment center. They're together now. And so I start texting her. She starts sneaking around behind his back to come see me. And then he finds out about me. And so now we're going to fight. And we're going to meet up. And it's going to be all this stuff. And so after about a week, he doesn't ever come to meet me. And I was tired of all the talk. And so I find out where he lives. Very nice gated community apartments. So I go there, hop the fence, find his apartment. I'm knocking on his door, trying to get him to come outside. He won't come outside. And so in all honesty, the girl loved the fact that there were 2 guys getting ready to fight over her. So she was in there kind of stoking the flame a little bit. Wow. And when it was all said and done, he wouldn't come out. She packs her stuff. She leaves and comes with me. So now I feel like I just won the grand prize, right? And so I have this grand plan. We're going to move to Temple, Texas. And because there's a VA there, that's where we're going to get sober. Now there's no rhyme or reason why that was ever going to happen. I don't know why I thought that, but
that was a plan.
That's what we were rolling with. And so we pull into Temple, Texas. I find the first little crackhead motel I can get. Probably cost me $20 to get a room. I get a room. We go in. She starts unpacking her stuff. All of a sudden, out comes a laptop. Out comes an iPad. Out comes a cell phone, a PlayStation, all this electronic stuff I know she didn't have the money for. And now one thing I never got down with in my entire addiction was stealing. I always just felt like it was bad karma. It never felt right to me, so I just never stole. And so I never had any problem with this guy other than the girl. And now I got the girl back, so in my mind, like, we got no problems anymore. And so I hit him up, and I'm like, hey, bro, I got your stuff. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm not going to pawn it. You're more than welcome to come get it. And so he had thought that I was setting him up for whatever reason. And so he ended up sending his mother to come pick up that stuff. Now, why you would send your mom to a shady motel in the middle of the night to get stolen stuff back?
To a guy that they beat him up.
Wow, you must have been real scared to do that, right? Like,
so, very nice woman. I give her the stuff back. That's that. So now fast forward 3 years later, I end up in Austin, Texas. I'm looking at doing 20 years. I end up in a 6-month treatment facility. And I remember taking a look in the mirror one day and I hated who I saw. I'd let myself go. I had always grown up an athlete, a soldier. I had a gut out to here. I felt like shit, looked like shit. So I'd found out about a little running group that was meeting in Austin. I was not a runner growing up. If I was running without a basketball or a football in my hand, I was in trouble for something. It was punishment. And so I decided I'm going to go. I'm going to lose a little bit of weight. And so I start going. And then I remember showing up the first day. I tried to run 2 miles, lungs on fire, wondering why am I doing this? But I get done and I'm like, man, like I felt a sense of accomplishment for once. So it's like, all right, I'm going to keep going back. And then pretty quickly, 2 miles turned into 3 miles, 3 miles turned into 4. And I start hearing about this woman named Penny that runs trail races and ultra marathons. So I'm like, oh, I need to meet Penny. And so I go one day, she's there, I meet her, awesome woman. And I was like, ma'am, will you please train me up for a race? All I want to do is run a trail race. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So she takes me out on the trail and she's teaching me how to run trails. And so when you do a lot of these ultra marathons, you're on mountains, you're at altitude, and so you have to learn how to be able to like run downhill full speed on the side of a mountain with loose rocks and roots and all this stuff. So she's teaching me. And now I'm very open with my story. I tell it all the time. And so I'm telling her my story, kicked out of the military, went to treatment, ended up with a girl. And when I got to the girl part, I ended up saying the girl's name. And she has a very unique name. It's not one you hear every day. And so when I said her name, my friend Penny's running and she stops and she looks over and she's like, Shawn, do you know my son? And I was like, well, who's your son? Her son was my young homeboy from the treatment center.
Wow.
She was the mother that 3 years before had come and picked that stuff up off me.
Wow.
Now, if that's not God, I don't know what is. Because that story could have went down a million different ways. We could have fought. Somebody could have got robbed. Somebody could have got killed. In this time, anybody that lives in Texas knows we had this huge influx of California people coming, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan. Millions of people came to Austin. I left in that amount of time. What is the chances that I leave this city that's growing every day for 3 years and come back and get plugged in with the one person that would literally introduce me to an avenue that would save my life? Penny is the vice president of cybersecurity for Visa.
Wow.
Right? On what spectrum of the universe does a 4-time felon that's been kicked out of the military, heroin addict, become best friends with the vice president of cybersecurity for Visa? Like, she's one of my best friends to this day. She always will be. I spent every Thanksgiving at her house. Her son is a good friend. But that right there, that, you know what I mean? Yeah. Too many coincidences there for it not to be God.
Yeah. For sure. There's always, and throughout our lives, I think, make no bones about it. I mean, faith plays a big, major part of my life, and even we all have stories, man, where you're saved or something happens, and some people say, "Oh, that was coincidence," or "That was this, that was that." I don't know. For me, just a faithful guy. I just think it's the hand of God that sometimes just redirects you a little bit on what you need to do and put you in the right place at the right time. I always say, man, good things happen to good people. And you're at a great place right now, and you're helping a lot of people. Even people watching this right now are just probably very inspired, and families that are hearing this and seeing it that are all dealing with. We talk about mental health all the time. But there is another addiction out there. There's another issue that needs to be addressed, and you're helping a lot of people right now.
Thank you.
I always say I wasn't gifted with faith, right? Maybe that's my journey. I'm not done yet. But I always say, whatever it is that allows you to believe that or whatever, I just wasn't given that. It's not for everybody, I guess. You know what I mean? But I have a lot of people that believe in that and whatever, and I always. I don't, but I guess when I was younger, I tried to alter that. Try to be like, well, think about this, you know what I mean, or whatever. But now I always say, well, just because I don't believe doesn't mean he's not working through me to get to you. You're right. So it's still acknowledging, it's still saying, hey, you know what? I believe you. Right? So people often would say, so you're not a believer. And I'd be like, no, I'm a believer. I believe you're right. I believe he's right. I believe you're right. I believe I'm right. And I believe he's right. There's enough room for it, right? We don't have to, not someone has to be wrong or whatever, right? So it's a different perspective of it where I'm not saying I believe in that wholeheartedly, but I can acknowledge it. Right. I can say, man, maybe he's more working through me to get to you somehow. You know what I mean? My mental process doesn't go through faith, but maybe yours does, and maybe that's what you need to hear, and maybe that's what I'm here to tell you something or whatever. I'm not dissing it or putting it over there. It's very present still. It's present if you bring it.
And both my sons went to Catholic school other school years. And it's just different. Yeah. And I'm more of a guy too that I'm gonna do it all myself. I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna be that. Do everything I can. So if there is, he don't have to do it. Help someone else because I got me. And I'm gonna take care of myself as much as I can. If there's something that I need, okay. But right now, I'm going to do it all myself.
Right.
Yeah, and that was a tough one because, you know, growing up with the whole faith thing, not to get off topic, but when he was fighting a lot, I always saw people thank God after the fight and all that. And I would get confused with that. I would be like, so you won and you're thanking God. Like, did you pray more than the other guy or what? Like, there must be some other element.
But if he prayed more than I did and I beat him, so my praise are stronger.
Like, that guy walked in the ring with a rosary.
Right.
How did you win? Right? Like, just like those little thoughts of like, just go through my brain of like logical brain.
Yeah.
Of like, well, did you pray? I don't see you praying. We don't go to church. Like, why are you thanking God? Like, you're the one in the gym.
Well,
all those little things.
We all have the free will.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
And
right?
all
God
those little.
gives us that free will.
That's what James always says. That he goes, "You're right. He's right. He's right."
That's
I think that's the back. And I apologize for being so quiet. I've been like just. I've been touched.
I was waiting for you to jump
I've just
in.
been touched.
Let's go.
No, I've been touched just through just being here. I can't imagine just the viewer at home just really. I mean, sitting next to you, I feel that energy. But talking about Catholic school, I feel like, not to knock on it or anything, because that's a big part of who I am and all that, but we were taught not to really question anything. You know what I mean? So I feel like that only lit his flame even more to I mean, if you tell him not to do something, he's probably going to do it.
Right. I'm going to think about it. It's like, I would think anybody else, to his point,
Right.
you say someone don't do it, they're going to think of, the last thing I heard was do it.
you and I question everything. I'm skeptical of everything and stuff like that. I know for me, the big thing about God was just understanding there's something out there greater than me. Right. As an addict, I make myself the center of the universe. I'm the end all be all. I'm selfish. Everything's about me. And so really turning my life over and understanding, like, I'm not, you know what I mean? I want to be the director of everything. I want this to go here and I want this to happen. My life goes to shit every time I do that. And so it's been the most freeing thing ever to just kind of take my hands off. I focus on putting good energy out in the world. I focus on helping people.
Amen, that's it.
And all I know is I've been blessed ever since I've been doing that.
How can that be wrong, right? How can that be wrong to do that? Be a good person.
Yeah.
For sure.
I always tell people that just, be of service, help others out there. Good will come your way. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And that doesn't mean that I'm losing faith in it. It's not my time right now.
Right.
Right? It's not the journey I'm supposed to be on, or it's got to be patient and something to kind of turn around, And you certainly are that. You certainly are redemption.
Yep.
So how do you get into the podcast, and how does all this come about? And by the way, congratulations on a badass podcast, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very
How many
blessed.
episodes and how many guests have you had?
We're just released episode 64. We got a couple in the can. We got somebody flying in tomorrow. We're doing big things. We're trying.
That's awesome.
Who's coming in tomorrow?
Have you ever heard of Radio Man?
Radio Man.
Yeah.
No.
So Radio Man is described as Hollywood's most famous homeless man. And so his story is absolutely incredible.
Wow.
If you looked on his Instagram right now, your jaw would hit the floor. There's not a famous person in Hollywood. There's not a famous actor or actress that he doesn't have on there. First name basis with them all, right? And so the story goes, he was a homeless guy, New York City, and he would just hang out at movie sets. And so one day he was drunk on a movie set and he started berating the actor when they cut and telling him he was mailing it in, he was acting like shit, this is how he needed to do it. And so the dude came over after the scene and told him that they were going to go get a beer when they were done shooting that day, and then ended up being Bruce Willis.
Wow.
So he becomes friends with Bruce Willis and then does the same thing again to another actor in another movie and told him he was playing a homeless man all wrong. And so then this homeless man ended up being Robin Williams.
Wow.
So he became good friends with Robin Williams. He can walk on any movie set in New York City. He's been on over 200 movies.
Wow.
George Clooney, Christian Bale, you name it. They know this guy. And so he's going to fly in tomorrow.
That's awesome.
That's huge.
What a great story.
Yeah,
Love to hear.
it's wild.
Looking forward to watching that.
For sure,
I'm
definitely.
excited. But dude, the podcast isn't anything that I ever planned on really. But I got blessed with the opportunity and came down here to San Antonio and met some awesome people, and they saw something in me and decided they were gonna bless me with the opportunity to be able to do it. And they gave me the opportunity, and I've been running with it ever since. And so just it's such a surreal experience to have this film about my life or about my family. It still doesn't seem real to me, but I saw the therapeutic benefits of understanding of like using your experience to help others or being vulnerable and talking about your stuff and understanding that it can help people. And so then I got blessed with the opportunity to be able to do that for somebody else. And so I know so many people with all these badass stories, and the one thing with traveling around and speaking that I've come to the realization of is, for me, it was drugs and alcohol. But at the end of the day, we're all recovering from something. Yeah. We've all been through stuff. And each one of you guys have been through a unique life experience of things I've never been through. And there was a person in treatment I was working with one time. They were dying from AIDS, and they were close. And you could see it in their eyes. They didn't have life in their eyes. Like, they had checked out. And I remember sitting there talking with him, like, very deeply. And he was talking to me and, like, saying I'm inspirational and this and that. And I was like, man, listen, like, you have an opportunity right now. You can touch people that I could never get to. I don't know anything about, like, what you're going through. You know what I mean? You could go in there. You don't think there's a kid somewhere who thinks his life's over? The next day I saw that dude, and he had come alive. He had color in his face. He had color in his eyes. He was walking around. He was helping people. And so just getting people to understand, like, if you are blessed with the opportunity that you've made it through adversity, you're also uniquely qualified to now go use that experience to help other people. Yeah. The most selfish thing I could have ever done would be to got sober and then just go on and live my life. Yeah. If I don't go back and use all this experience to help people, then what was it all for?
Right.
So, you got to pay it forward.
Yes.
And the thing about, I you know, for anybody watching, I would recommend watching this documentary. It's very, very powerful. But what I would say is it's a piece that, it's not a period piece. It's not a piece that's going to fizzle out. This is going to help forever. There's always going to be somebody dealing with something like that, right? And it's not something that's going to fizzle out in a couple of years like any other documentary or movie. This is a thing that it's going to help people 20 years down the road. You know what I mean? It's very personal. It's a personal thing. You know what I mean? And I like to think of this podcast as that. It's very deep, but it's not something that's going to age poorly. You know what I mean? There's always going to be somebody that needs some help. There's always going to be somebody that needs a helping hand or an ear or something. And the fact that you made something like that is crazy. You know what I mean? That's very bold, but it's very bold, but it's just cool to see. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking up to you in a way of like, man, yeah, you're right. Like, you know, and I could be doing this now. Like, I could do more or whatever. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I was watching a documentary. And I believe it was your coach, your running coach, was saying, man, this guy's on fire. Like, he's like, and I can feel that. I think we can all feel that. There's an energy.
Which is why I'm silent the whole time. I'm just,
you know what I mean?
Feeling, just absorbing
it's
it
really
all.
cool to see.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that we all talk about is something that everyone wants and gets is hope, right? When you talk about that, like you just talked about that guy with AIDS, he had hope that he can get through it and keep going. We do it.
Yeah.
There's hope. Yeah. You can go through it.
Yeah, if you can find that sliver of hope and latch onto it, man.
That's everything, right?
It's special, for sure.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask, though, when I was watching this documentary, you're going 100 miles, right? It's crazy, but what was the training like for that? What was the longest you had gone before that? You know, did you reach 60 or did you go like, you know, what was the training like?
So the training would be like 80, 90, 100 miles a week, depending on the week. It would kind of fluctuate. Yeah. When I did that race, I didn't know what I was doing. I pulled my training plan out of a book. I didn't know how to eat properly. Like, I went very much at it like an addict. But I had running friends that, you know, that could guide me kind of along the way. But up to that point, the biggest race I had done was 62 miles, 100K, a tough 100K one. But, you know, you get to, if I just said, like, all right, I'm going to give you $80 out of 100, you're like, oh, I have almost $100. That's cool. But go run 80 miles and realize you still have 20 left to go. It's like, holy, you know what I mean? We're not even close to being done. So the training was like that. And I think the only way I can describe it is like I do in the film. And it was just a very mind, body, spirit thing. Like,
do you remember it?
The race?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I have a question about just the conversations that you have with yourself when it's just you out there, pitch black.
Yes.
And
dark conversations, dude. Dark.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to touch on is like, do you remember a specific conversation or, you know, just the just everything that was combined together? Like, what did it sound like? What was it, you know?
So it was a combination of so many things. One, I got a camera crew there following me, right? So there's that pressure of like, I got to do this. The biggest thing and biggest question in my head was, I have no idea if my family knows I'm doing this right now, right? And so running in a very unique way gave my family something to see, because they had heard all the lip service before. It's going to be different this time. I'm going to stay sober. I promise, all these things. Well, I'm in Texas. They're in Ohio. They have no idea what's really going on. And the only thing I've showed them up to this point is that I can clean up for a little bit, but inevitably I'm going to fall off.
This was your folder to them.
Pretty much, yeah. And so I made a conscious decision that I like wiped my social media clean because I had so much bullshit on there. And so I was like, all right, I'm only going to post positive stuff. Pictures of me at races, results, group pictures, stuff like that. So, but they're not big social media people. I hoped they saw it, but I didn't know. And so that morning, I remember I got one text from my grandmother, and she said, honey, don't worry. If you ever get tired, lonely, or cold, it's gonna make me cry, man. If you ever get tired, lonely, or cold, just know that I'm at home following along on my iPad. And so that was the one thing that when stuff would get really tough, I would sit there and imagine in my head that my grandma was at home watching me on a movie. She wasn't. She was just checking the numbers. But I was like, could I really quit with her doing that? And so you get to mile 60, mile 70, and you know, your body's now taking you about as far as it's going to take you. So now every step you're like, what am I doing? Like, I need new hobbies. Like, what am I thinking? And so then you get to mile 70 and you're like, I could turn it in right now. Who is going to turn their nose up at me for quitting at mile 70?
70 miles.
Most people won't run that cumulative in their entire life. And so it becomes really easy where every step you take, it's like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Well, then I would bring back up my grandma or thinking of these things. And then, bro, when the sun goes down, it gets cold, it gets wet. At this point in the race, everybody is super stretched out. So you might go 4-6 hours without seeing, you know what I mean? You're going a long time without seeing people. You've missed every meal that day. You're never sitting down and eating an actual meal. And so you go into these aid stations. And so every 5, 7, 10 miles, there's an aid station. But you have to also think every aid station I go into, if, let's say I take 10 minutes here and there's 10 aid stations, that's 100 minutes of more I need to be on my feet. And so people would be like, oh, did you sleep? No, I want to get done. Like, I don't want to be on my feet anymore. And so you get to mile 80, and that night is the longest night of my life. It's like it will never end. And then all of a sudden, right when you feel like night can't be any longer, it starts getting a little bit lighter out. And then you're about mile 80, mile 85, the sun starts coming up. All of a sudden, my body temperature starts going up, and like it starts getting really real where I'm like, oh, man, I might be able to do this. I might be able to do this. And then I remember getting to mile 90, and that's where it like all registered for me. And I was like, holy shit, like I'm going to finish this.
It's real,
like, holy. And I mean, not to spoil it at home, and you guys have seen it, but I come into that last aid station, and the people that work the aid stations, they're trail runners too. So they understand what you're going through. So they do everything they can to make it like a good experience. They got music playing. They'll have hot plates out there with bacon and gummy bears and just like good food. And
I saw you load up on those gummy bears.
Yeah, that's why I can eat them and not feel guilty. And she had banana bread. And so I smashed these 2 pieces of banana bread, and I like came alive. And if you watch the film, there was an angel on my shoulder the entire time. We call him Detroit. And he and I had been through pretty much the whole race together. And at mile 90, I came alive and he was dead. And he was like, go. And I'm like, no, I'm not leaving you. We're finishing this together. He's like, look, go. I'll see you at the end. And I was like, all right. And so I start running. And by this time in the race, like everybody is dead. There's people that have shit themselves, pissed themselves, puking. It's carnage. But for whatever reason, I get this jolt of energy and I start running at like a pretty good clip. And so people are looking like, what's going on with him? Where'd this come from?
That banana bread.
Yeah, I'm telling you, there's some in it. And so I make it through the woods and I hit the road. And when you hit the road, you know you're on the last 7 miles. And so it's a straight stretch of road to a high school football stadium. And I come off the trail and there's the van waiting there for me and they got the camera, right? So much emotion is going through my body and my eyes are tearing up and I want to cry so bad, but I'm on camera, so I got to play tough guy. I can't let anybody see me cry. And so I'm running along there with the camera, and then they take off, and so now it's just me running. And that right there is where everything is playing over in my head, where it was like, damn, a year ago I was sitting in a prison cell. A year ago I was in treatment. I was a dope fiend a year ago. Like, holy shit, look what I'm doing. And there was a large factor of running and ultra running, and like I won a marathon, started placing in races. There was a large part of that. I got a real big kick out of the fact I've only been doing this a year, and I was racing against people that have been running their entire lives, and I'm like winning and doing well. And I was like, man, I was shooting dope a year ago. What have you guys been doing? You know, it was just such a cool feeling for someone like me. And so I start getting closer to the high school football stadium, and I can start hearing people and air horns and cowbells going off. And that right there, I'm like thinking of like my grandma following along on her iPad. And I'm like, is she going to know when I cross this line? And so I keep getting closer to the stadium. And when I came into the stadium, I hear the roar of everybody, and I could hear my 3 friends, Penny being one of them, yelling over everybody. I could hear them screaming for me. It's getting me emotional. And so I hit the track, and I'm so excited to see them. And I come around this quarter lap of the track, and I hit the final straightaway. I'm about to finish this race, and I look up. The finish line's there. Everybody's cleared out. And my mom and my little sister, I see their blonde hair standing there waiting for me, and I lose it. It is the most incredible, special moment that I could have ever asked for in my life. The fact that it is captured on a film is the most craziest thing in the world to me. The fact that my family still cared enough to not only know I was running the race, but to come down there, to be there for me, my sister, to see me cross the line strong like I did. I mean, I was just eternally grateful, man. We talked about God a lot in this podcast, but if that's not God working in my life, because stuff like that doesn't happen for me. I was put here for some reason. And I know now it was to go through all that stuff to get to that point and to do what I do today. I don't know. It's crazy.
It's impressive, but I'm impressed with the guy carrying the camera doing it as well.
Well, they were only at the aid station.
Yeah, I'm just playing.
It was funny. I always joke with them. So the director's, my job is to do the race, right? The director's job is to get his shots and do all that stuff. So there would be times we're 60, 70 miles in, and I'd come into an aid station. He'd be like, we didn't get the shot. Can you go back over that hill? And I want you to come back over. I'm like, dude, you're crazy. No.
Go run back and come back.
Or hey, we're getting the drone set up. Do you mind waiting here? No, I'm not waiting here. Be ready. I was super in my feelings about it. For
sure. That's what I was thinking about when we were watching like guys like Bear Grylls and all that. I'm like, they're out there doing some crazy stuff. There's a guy holding a camera doing the same shit. Yeah. And like, yeah, that's impressive.
Bro, when they're doing like climbing up rocks with no climbing. Yeah, dude, wild. Wild. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I guess this is a boxer thing, right? But why you did something and it impacted me so much, and it was probably the littlest thing to you, but it seems like boxers have this ability of like when a fan comes up and meets you, that you can lean down and whisper a little something to him, and it just is like the biggest thing in the world. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Well, do you, like, if you go up around a boxer, so I walked up to you and was just saying hello at Red Carpet Brawl last year or whatever, and you leaned down and you're like, love doing the podcast. Let's do another one. And I walked away. I'm like, oh, he wants to do another one. Like, I was so excited. But then I see, it was just like those little moments with fighters where it's like, you know what I mean? Like, you could just say something so little, but it's so big for somebody else.
I met Ali. Remember I told you about that? Meeting Ali changed my life. And anytime you could do that for anyone else, man.
Yeah.
It was just a little thing, right? But I do that with everyone. I mean, I try to. Sometimes you're busy or whatever, but whenever I get a chance to talk to someone, I'm going to talk to them.
I think that's the thing of taking, I call it taking them sidebar, right? Like, you could be here and I can tell you something right here and I'm just taking you sidebar, and that means so much. It's like, this just stopped. Yeah. Everything happening, just the world stopped for a moment. You know what I mean? And I love those interactions. I've had them every now and then with other people helping me out, right? Where I don't hear all the noise, but someone whispered something and it was so loud.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That was me with Ali. I'm sitting there and he's just looking at me and talking. I'm talking to him and he's just like this. And he's eating grapes. Just looking at me, talking to me, giving me everything.
Right.
Giving me all the attention. I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
Right. But just the ability for us to have only spoken for a couple seconds, but like for you to be that present in that moment and say that, I walked away. I was like, damn, he's good. He's good.
No, but it's. I mean, I would like to do another one, you know, but it's just.
I think that's the sport too. Of boxing is a very humbling sport. You know, you're forced to put your pride aside and to be just present in what's happening, and I think that's a big thing for being raised in it. Is be present, just, you never know if you're going to have another opportunity to experience the same thing you're experiencing now, which is why I'm as present as I ever been right now, just with you. So obviously.
Shawn, I think we gotta do this one again. I think if you made it this far in the podcast, you got something out of this. This is great. You know, I think we're gonna definitely need to do this again. I don't even know how to end this because I don't even want to. You know what I mean?
My brother, thank
Shawn,
you. I'm honored. Thank you guys all.
And if you haven't seen the documentary, 100 Miles to Redemption's great.
Please
It's a great watch.
And if I could ever get all you guys together, schedule wise, I would be honored to have you guys on my show. So if we could ever make that happen, let's do it.
Means a lot.
That'd be awesome.
I'd love to have you on, just sit there and talk about our commonalities.
Sure.
I would definitely love to have you on again. So all you guys, and just so people know, like I Am Redemption is it's not for only people in recovery. We have people from all different walks of life. We've had UFC fighters on, Olympic athletes, people in music, movies, runners. Doesn't matter because at the end of the day, we're all recovering from something.
Mm-hmm. Your story definitely crosses all those barriers.
And we're all part of the same family, man.
Thank you. And just real quick, I want to say one of the common things of outlets is still physical, right? It's always physical.
Yes.
And that, I guess that, does so much for your mental side, the physical side, everything. Just that release.
Yes.
That we need to do every once in a while.
We gotta see you in the gym. We gotta see you, Bob.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what this does.
If you want to go get on some weights, we'll get busy. But if we're boxing, I'm starting from day one.
Okay.
Day one.
But we always say that sometimes that's the best because you don't have any bad habits.
Good.
You know what I mean? It's all good from there.
Let's go.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. Shawn, thank you very much for joining us. Great episode. Happy to bring your story to this podcast.
Thank you, bro.
Very, very appreciative of it. Guys, please like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time, next episode. Leija Lounge, we're here. We're bringing you this.
Let's go.